and about 254 naira per liter as at June the 16th, up from 239 naira per liter in April. They're going by where crude oil has climbed to $75 a barrel as of, I think, last Friday. And also essentially saying that the subsidy, what Nigeria is paying for subsidy, has now increased essentially. And pretty much, I think they're calculating about 5 billion naira per month now in terms of subsidy costs to the nation. So it's the same story that we've been following now with respect to where we are in terms of rising crude oil prices and how they're impacting the country. We're still at 162. Interestingly enough, the government's position now is that they want to close in on smuggling. According to Timi Presilva, the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, they've now put tracking devices on the trucks that leave depots and go to the different fuel stations across the country. So with these tracking devices, he says that Nigeria should be able to monitor where fuel goes. By monitoring it, hopefully we'll be able to curb smuggling. But, I don't know, it seems like this seems very sudden. This fuel tracking device matter, it came up after the president's interview on television, right? Which was I think that's now 2-3 weeks ago, where he said that if you remove the subsidy, Nigerians are going to yell and scream, and that what needs to be done is that there needs to be reduction in smuggling of fuel to other countries. And then a stakeholders meeting was called last week or so at the behest of the president. Mele Kyari of the NNPC was there, the DSS, the EFCC. All of a sudden, after that meeting now, I think this news came out yesterday on Sunday. The News Agency of Nigeria reported this. Now they've said, oh, wow, now we have a tracking device on each of the trucks that is in the country that leaves from the depots to the fuel stations. So now we should be able to track them. Is
that all they came up with?
That's it. That's all they came up with.
But this doesn't need any meeting to come up. I mean, that doesn't require a meeting of stakeholders to come up with this idea. People track their vehicles anyway, so
right. What the thing is, again, if you look at the amount of fuel consumed monthly, they're saying about 42 million is smuggled out of the nation, and apparently we consume about 60 million. That 60 million number is being questioned, but that's what. So altogether, about 102 million liters is what's being consumed per day, of which 40% of that, or 42%, is being smuggled. And it's because of the price. I mean, we've gone through this over and over again. It's because of the price. But whether or not they're going to be able to clamp down on fuel smuggling is a whole other question altogether. Because I know that I can't remember the amount of money that was approved. There was some money approved for customs a while back for them to buy more vehicles and assist more agents in being able to monitor the borders. So if we are 42 million liters being smuggled out of the country to other nations, and now you're saying you're putting in tracking devices, this is, as you said, we're at the tail end of June. June is about to. By the end of July, will we see an improvement or rather a reduction in the amount of fuel that is consumed on a monthly basis, based on the federal government being able to clamp down on fuel smuggling? Because look, can you imagine a tanker of fuel driving across the border and not being noticed or not being seen? It's hard to make the argument that, it's like an elephant crossing the border and you say you don't see it. It's hard to make the argument that there are elements within the government or the agencies, customs, unfortunately, that are not involved in the smuggling of these tankers across the border, or allowing them to get past. There has, they're too
Which will
big.
make sense. It will make sense. If you're asking about the gains of this tracking device, I think they will, based on the metrics that probably influence their thoughts or decision to put on these tracking devices, it signals that, oh yes, they're trying to avoid these human factors, these human errors, in terms of the collusion that you alluded to, right? So I guess the tracking devices could actually help them save, some of those excesses or some of the waste due to the diversions. For private filling station operators, I know that's a major issue that they've had to deal with. Most people actually incur losses on a month-to-month basis based on their supplies being diverted or even siphoned, along the way. Some of the tankers, right? They stop along the way. Sometimes we've had stories of such. They have a way of padding the quantities that they supply. So it should give some results.
It should, but then Val, the reason why it's happening is because of arbitrage. Arbitrage is when you've got, buying and simultaneous buying and selling of an asset that is missing. So it's because it is the arbitrage, the difference they are making between the low cost here in Nigeria and the cost in Cameroon, Chad, Niger, all these other countries. That's what is fueling this. So again, it still seems like they are addressing the symptom rather than the actual illness. If you focus on the price itself and you deregulate the downstream sector, you disincentivize people wanting to get into the game of smuggling in order to sell fuel to other countries at a higher price. So that's what, but still, there's just doesn't seem to be any urgency there. We haven't heard anything from the latest round of meetings between the federal government and Labour. As we speak, South Africa, Ghana, Kenya, a number of African nations have all increased pump price of fuel. They've all gone up in those respective countries. All of them have taxes. They even have taxes on fuel. But South Africa has this road insurance fund. I learned about this, where whether you're a foreigner or you're a indigenous South African, if you are driving on South African roads and you get into an accident, there's a fund that covers vehicle damage or insurance to a certain limit. And that insurance is funded by fuel taxes that South Africans pay. And those fuel taxes recently, in fact, I think they paused them because of what's been going on with COVID and all these other issues. But so the fuel taxes went up in Ghana, fuel taxes went up in Kenya. So these guys, they've already gone far ahead to where they are paying taxes on the fuel that they purchase. Not even there yet. We're still doing VAT at 7.5%. That's the only tax increase we've seen. So we're not only are we not deregulated, we haven't even reached the level of taxes, because tax to GDP in Nigeria, again, single digits, very, very low. I hear our revenue GDP in Nigeria is one of the lowest in the world, according to the World Bank, or I think it's the World Bank. So we're just still way behind in terms of this conversation we're having, you and I. It is an ancient conversation that other African nations have addressed and moved on. It's already funding. So
I personally, I would like the push for taxes to go alongside, hand in glove with the push for more infrastructure or developed infrastructure or things to work. Because if you're paying tax, you need to see it working. That's what would encourage you to even pay more, right?
Exactly.
Joel sent in a message on WhatsApp. He says, the first on WhatsApp here this morning. Thanks, Joel. He says the government should stop looking at the prices one way, Jerry. We're making more from the crude oil price increase as well. They should encourage and support the modular refineries to cater for local demand, as we do for agro business in the north. Tokbe, thank you so much for your message. Henry says, when did they start using tracking devices for the trucks, and what's the improvements recorded? They just started, Henry. He said, call me a cynic, but I'm skeptical about this tracking device story. Okay, let's just wait till it works before we get cynical, Harry. Frank says, the idea of a tracking device is the lamest thing I've heard this year. What happens when a tracker or a trailer gets to its destination in Nigeria and transloads to another trailer? Tracker need tracker call. Wenga Komu says, good morning. It seems like every day the NNPC is shouting about landing cost of fuel. Is this about people's high BP daily? It says this about giving people high BP daily. Do they know the price of Gary in the markets and they haven't removed subsidies? Are those in government aware of the rising food prices? It does not seem like a concern for them. Hunger breeds much more than desperation. And he adds, how can 42 million liters be smuggled out of the country and it's untraceable? It's a well-orchestrated exercise. The government lacks the will to tackle those involved. Cruz says, I recall the borders were closed for a long period of time. I also recall then was to tackle smuggling on multiple levels. How come tankers crossing the border after the borders were open didn't raise alarm? Interesting, see?
Exactly.
Exactly. This points to a group of people looking the other way, yeah? Stretching their arms one way and then looking the other way. Larry says tracking is a good idea for monitoring and managing the smuggling, but I would suggest a private company manages the accountability and monitoring of this tracking, or possibly they can create a public geo map where anyone can monitor the trucks. If not, it's still another futile effort with this lot. Larry, fantastic ideas there. It says, greetings to everyone. That's from Timothy. Timothy says, I hope you know that criminals outside the tracking device can steal from the fuel station. Afterwards, and would a CCTV be also installed to forestall such? I wonder, which is actually another thing that, another idea he reminded me of by this message, Timothy. He says, remember in the UK and some other countries, right? You have trucks equipped with cameras, internal cameras, especially just to track the drivers as they're, especially for logistics companies. So why can't this be employed as well?
See, cameras, tracking device, reduce the price. I mean, excuse me, deregulate sector. If you deregulate all these extra things you're doing, you don't have to get into them. Just deregulate.
Yeah, but Rotus, I mean, it seems like a better idea to at least track where the wastage is coming from or where the leakage is coming from. Then you can now say, oh yeah, you know what? Because we've been able to block all these holes, and it's still not enough. Then we can increase the price. I mean, look, in terms of priority.
Nigeria is a big country. Nigeria is as far as
massive.
It's massive. The borders, if you think about, if you go down to this, I've seen videos of the Seme border, and there are other areas that are not, properly manned. It's a Herculean task. It can be done. You can use drones. You can use all these other things. If you want to really survey your borders, but it's a lot of cost. It's a lot of manpower.
It needs a lot of structure.
Yeah, do a lot. You might as well do the easier thing and deregulate. But look, we'll keep following this matter and seeing how it goes.
All right, more stories here. Orisha says, Nigeria is a peculiar country. Ordinarily, this subsidy should be removed, but we know it would be diverted to be stolen by the politicians. I can't attest to that.
Trust deficits.
Orisha. It says the common man won't benefit from this removal, but instead would leave him worse off. What did the increase from 88 naira to 145 do for me and you? We are even poorer. Tunde says the regulation isn't a solution to tracking smuggling. Nigeria produces petrol, and there's no way you won't expect petrol to be cheaper here than our neighbors that don't produce. Thank you, Tunde, for that message. Rotus? That's all for now.
Well, the time?
Yes.
All right, well, thank you, Val. Thank you all for your messages. We'll continue this conversation and see what happens. It's ongoing.
Yes, please. We'll follow it closely. Stay tuned. Thanks, Rotus. Rotus is at Rotan Quotes on